Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, and hopefully in videos to come, I would like to talk about using the rules from the Fighting Fantasy series of gamebooks and other material. And in particular, I would like to start by looking at character creation. Rolling up a character in Fighting Fantasy is very simple, at least in the sort of basic system that the original game books used. There are more complexities added later, which I will go through. But in the original books, there's only 3 attributes that you roll up. There's skill, stamina, and luck. And as you can see, I've got a set of attributes here. I've actually rolled the lowest possible skill and the lowest possible luck, but I've done quite well with stamina. And if I press restart, I can get a new character and so on. So that's what it looks like. Let's have a look at the code that allows it to happen. So it's very simple. There's only 2 pages. There's the page where we set up the attributes and set up the initial values that they have. And there's another page called Story Caption, which prints the value of those attributes in the sidebar. I often find that having the character's details in the sidebar is a good use of the sidebar, because often you want to know what your character's situation is at all times, and so you can have the sort of character sheet in the sidebar and have the narrative in the main frame of it. Obviously, if you don't want to do that, you don't have to, but that's the way that I usually do it. And if you want to print something in the sidebar, you need to create a page, call it Story Caption, and you need to capitalize it in the way that I've done it here. So it has to be capital S, and then lowercase TORY and capital C, lowercase APTION. And if you do that, whatever code is in that page will print in the sidebar as you go. So let's have a look at... actually, sorry, I was going to say let's have a look at this page, but the other thing you might have noticed that normally when you run a Twine story, the name of the file will be at the top of the sidebar, and in this case it wasn't. I wanted to use the Fighting Fantasy logo, and it looked better getting rid of the file name. So I'll show you how I did that first. I have done a video on how to do this, but just to remind you, I think it's in Style Sheet. Yes, it is. Okay, so we go to, in case you didn't see, we go to Story up here, then we go to Style Sheet, and we enter this code. So it's hash or hashtag story, so STORY dash title, TITLE. Then we have a pair of curly brackets, and inside the curly brackets we have display, DISPLAY, colon, space, none, NONE, and then we have a semicolon. We don't technically need the semicolon. The only time you need a semicolon in the style sheet is if you are doing more than one thing within a given pair of curly brackets. And in this case, I'm not, so I could have got rid of that like that, and it would have worked exactly the same. But I think that it's usually best to just put them in there, because it doesn't do any harm, and it's good to be in the habit of doing it, I think, so that when it is needed, you don't accidentally neglect to do it. Anyway, so to make the character, we need to roll for what their attributes are. That's their skill, stamina, and luck. And we need to have somewhere to store those results. And then we need, that's what we do on this page. And then printing the results is done on the story caption page. So let's have a look at the creation of the values first. So I'll just zoom in. First of all, I set $AT to be an array, and I've got a little set of notes here that says that it's going to be a two-dimensional array. The first number will tell you what attribute it is. So 1 is skill, 2 is stamina, and 3 is luck. And then the second number will be 0 or 1, and 0 will tell you the initial value, and 1 will tell you the current value. The reason you need to keep track of both is because often you might, in particular, you might regain stamina, and you often regain luck after losing them, but they can't go over their initial values, the values that they had at the start. So you need to keep track of where they're at now, and you also need to keep track of what they started with, because that is a maximum. So we set AT to be, at the moment, a one-dimensional array, but we'll turn it into a two-dimensional array as we go. And we also have another array which is $AN, which is just the names of the attributes that we're using. And as I do most of the time, I have put the word null in the first slot in the array, because that slot is slot 0, and I find it a bit instinctively easier to work from 1, unless there's a reason not to. But of course, if you don't feel the same, you don't have to do it. It's just, I find it easier to have 1 as the first number, sort of thing, rather than counting from 0, as computers often prefer to do. So here's the main bit of code. The only other thing on the page is just a note to myself that says that we're using $Z as a temporary variable. In other words, all of the little loops and things that we need to do, we'll be using Z for them. And then as I add more stuff to this, we'll almost certainly add more temporary variables, because we'll need to have more things tracked at a time. Anyway, we have a for loop. The loop goes from 1 to 3. And for each value between 1 and 3, we do all of these things. First of all, we set $AT square bracket $Z n square bracket to be itself an array. This is how we turn this one-dimensional array into a two-dimensional array. You have to individually turn each slot of the array into an array itself. You can't set it up as two-dimensional. There's no way you could say set AT equals something like that, and it's a two-dimensional array. Unfortunately, you need to sort of do it in a sort of quite long. Every individual slot needs to be turned into an array, and if we want to make a three-dimensional array, we then need to turn every slot in those arrays into arrays. So we set $AT $Z to be an array. We set $AT $Z 0, so the initial value, to be a random number from 1 to 6 plus 6. So it's the equivalent of rolling a die and adding 6. So it'll be something between 7 and 12. And then if Z is equal to 2, in other words, if we're dealing with the attribute stamina, then we set $AT $Z 0. I put Z there, but because this only happens if Z is 2, I could have done that as well. But anyway, I might fix it in the version that I upload to itch.io. But anyway, if Z is 2, we set $AT Z 0 plus equals, which means we set it to its current value plus whatever's here, which is again random 1 to 6 plus 6. And the reason for that is skill is in the original books, you roll 1 die and add 6. Luck, you roll 1 die and add 6. Stamina, you roll 2 dice and add 12. So by adding another random number from 1 to 6 and another 6, we get up to that. Then we set $AT, $Z1, which is the current value, to be equal to $AT, Z0. Because obviously at the start you are sort of on full values. Your stamina is its maximum and your skill and luck are at their maximum. And that's it. That's how we create a sort of basic or standard fighting fantasy character. Then we have to tell the user that we've done it. So this is what this is. There's quite a lot of code here, but this is a HTML table, and HTML tables require a lot of lines to set out. So it's a lot simpler than it looks. So we have a div, a paragraph. We have div align equals center, so it's a centered paragraph. Because this is story caption, this is all going to be in the sidebar. And we just have an img command, an image command, which finds the location and name of the file of the logo and displays it. Then we have a table, and the table is again centered in the column, and all of this code is just within the table. Now we have a loop here, which is exactly the same as the one we used in the other page. It's for z equals 1, and it goes up to 3. Usually, I think it's better practice to have, I have found, it's better practice to have variables. If you're using a story caption, a sidebar, it's better to have variable names that are only used in the sidebar, because you might have Z used in the main game, and the interaction between this loop and the value of Z that you've stored in one of the pages that you're encountering as you go throughout the game might create some effect that you didn't want. So in order to avoid that, I think it's best to use a special name for variables that's only for the sidebar. But at the moment, the code is so simple that that's not a danger, but we'll probably change that later. So we have a for loop. Everything in here is within this loop, so we're just going to do the same thing 3 times, which is start a row, and then we're going to have a series of cells, which are the TDs. TR is means start a new row in a HTML table, and TD means start a new cell. And then, of course, /TD means that's the end of that particular cell, and /TR means that's the end of that particular row. So we have a cell which is aligned to the right, and I've just got the name of the variable. I could have done it like this. I could have said print, I could have said less than, print space $AN square bracket $Z n square bracket. But if you just have the name of the variable, and it can be a slot from an array, then it will it understands that means display that whatever the current value is. AN, you'll remember, is the array that has the names of the attributes. So it'll say skill, it'll say skill, something like that. Then we have a cell that's just for spacing. We have TD style equals quote width colon space 5px, px meaning pixels, quote greater than, and then just /TD. So there's nothing in that cell. It's just a little 5 pixel wide spacer to avoid things being right next to each other. It looked a bit cramped otherwise. Then we have yet another cell that just has a colon. Then we have another one of these spacing cells. So you can see that despite there being a lot of lines, it's not really as complicated as as it looks, or at least when you're sort of scrolling through it and going, gee, there's a lot of code here. It's actually fairly straightforward. We have another spacer. We have a another cell aligned to the right, and it says $AT square bracket $Z n square bracket 1 n square bracket. So that's giving us the current value of whatever attribute we are displaying. Now, why is it aligned to the right? It's aligned to the right because some of the values are going to be single digits. Usually the skill and stamina will be, well, actually, no, skill is single digits half the time, and luck is single digits half the time, and stamina is always 2 digits. And if the skill or luck is 1 digit, you want that 1 digit to be under the ones of the stamina, or at least you do if you're fussy like me. You want it to be sort of lined up in the way that it would be on like a ledger or something like that. It looks a bit wrong if it's in the tens column. So that's why I aligned it to the right. And then we have this code which is within an if, and none of this executed in the example that I showed you, because it only executes if $AT square bracket $Z n square bracket 1 n square bracket is less than $AT square bracket $Z n square bracket 0 n square bracket. In other words, if the current version or the current level of an attribute is less than the initial value. If that's the case, then we have these extra cells. We have 5 pixel space, we have a slash, we have a 5 pixel space, and then we have $AT Z0. So for example, let's say your stamina, let's say you started with 16 stamina and you lost 2 because you got a wound, and usually when you're wounded you lose 2 stamina for each wound. So you've currently got 14. It would say 14/16, so sort of 14 out of 16. Because often you want to know what your maximum is as well as what your current one is, because in these games often you have the opportunity to heal, and it might say you can gain up to 4 stamina up to your maximum or something, and you want to know, well, is that gonna, am I going to get the value, the full value of that? If I had 14 stamina and my maximum was 16, I might not, I might not quaff the potion or eat the meal or whatever at that particular point. I might save it till I'd been a bit more battered, and therefore I'd get the full benefit of it. And similarly, your luck will go down. If you're not familiar with fighting fantasy, your luck often goes down because each time you do something that involves luck, it automatically reduces by 1. So it's like your luck sort of runs out. And you can regain it with various means. There are sometimes potions that will help, and sometimes, often you will gain a couple of points if something sort of lucky happens to you. But anyway, that is the sort of the basics of a fighting fantasy character. As I said, later books added more, extra ideas. Some of them have spells, and then they made a role-playing game version which was a bit more complicated, had the option to be a wizard, and then there was another role-playing game called Advanced Fighting Fantasy, and so on. And I'd like to explore those if people are interested. But these are the basics of how to make a fighting fantasy character. In a future video, I think I will look at combat, which is a very common occurrence in these books, and something that if you want to make a fighting fantasy type book, you definitely need to have a system for combat. But for now, I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.